Hey, y'all, go look at this.
3 years ago, I made an infographic on some reading I'd done on supposed pagan origins of Christmas. At the start of the research, I would have told you that some of these things were pagan.
Slide it on out, brother. Slide it out. Slide it right there. Right there. Just right there is good enough.
My Lord.
And that Christians had co-opted a number of them, and that while their origins might have been pagan, they were now completely disassociated from their pagan beginnings.
Wes Huff has established himself as a knowledgeable authority on historical facts, particularly in Christian theology.
Oh my God! Wow!
His debate with Billy Carson showcased his sharp ability to discern truth from falsehood. But what is his perspective on celebrating Christmas, a holiday that Pastor Gino Jennings firmly declares as pagan, insisting that anyone who observes it is a pagan? Let's tune in and find out.
However, as I read more and dug into the literature, and specifically the original sources, I found that my preconceived notion was actually backwards. In fact, some of the things I thought had pagan inceptions were actually practiced by Christians before they were by pagans, and pagans had appropriated them from Christians, not the other way around.
This is in some of y'all church.
That's right.
Thank God for television. This is in some of y'all church. This is in some of y'all homes.
That's right.
At the beginning of December, I reposted this infographic, pointing out that there was lack of evidence regarding the pagan genesis of a few modern Christian traditions, and boy did I get a response. It's obviously pagan, and everybody who has a brain on their head knows it. You will be judged for your leading astray the flock from Yeshua Adonai Yahuwah to follow the great Shaitan Ra.
Now, your pastor is telling you Jesus' birthday is coming on the 25th.
Amen.
A Christmas tree is an idol. You bring it sacrifices, hold hands around it to sing songs, and then bow down to it to get your presents. I've never seen a clearer example of pagan worship before. Jeremiah 10, 3-4 clearly forbids you to have a Christmas tree. You can try your best to say it doesn't, but what else could it be talk about?
Your pastor is a liar. Bible ain't never said Jesus was born December 25th.
You just want to justify your sinful fleshly Christmas as pagan, and it comes from Babylonian pedophilia. It doesn't take a brang scientist to figure that one out. Yes, it is. You are going to held accountable for every single thing you teach that is wrong and can mislead the souls. You are telling people it's not pagan, a celebration that is rooted with Nimrod, Semiramis, and his son Tammuz. A pagan celebration to worship the sun god? Really? It's not about us and this worldly traditions. It's about the one and only Messiah and his name being honored, not just for Christmas, but in everything we do.
Not only is your pastor a liar, your mama.
That's right.
You talk about my mama? Your mama.
Amen.
Your daddy. Children, there is no Santa Claus.
And the always popular High Mass of Apollyon the Destroyer, filthy puke emoji. Now, obviously, these are examples of some pretty extreme comments, but I'm not kidding when I say there were over 100 negative comments, some that I just had to delete because they were just not appropriate. My DMs also got pretty crowded with people accusing me of being a wolf, false prophet, Satan lover, and so on and so forth.
Your mama or your daddy bought them presents. There is no Santa Claus. There ain't no man 400 and 500 pounds coming down your chimney and live and talk about it. Not today. Stop lying.
And the point of this video is not to focus on the crazy, although there's a lot of that to go around. My purpose is to try and correct some of the misinformation and misunderstanding surrounding this particular topic.
This is heathenism.
Heathenism.
This is paganism.
That's right.
This ain't got nothing to do with God.
That's right. That's right.
Misinformation that I myself believed before, misunderstandings that I myself was ignorant on because I hadn't looked at the source material on the subject. Let's start off with some of the most common accusations and objections I see. The first, and probably the most talked about, is the date of Christmas itself.
That's right. Amen.
10th chapter, book of Jeremiah, real quick. Let me read it.
Jeremiah 10, we'll start at verse 1.
Come on, son.
Hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel.
Hear ye the word of the Lord that's coming to you now, Dover, Delaware, and the world.
Thus saith the Lord.
Thus saith Gino Jennings.
Thus saith the Lord.
You hear this now? You
Thus
got to be a hypocrite to go back to your church tomorrow. You got to be a child of hell.
It's often asserted that the date of December 25th was already a common one used in ancient Near East and Greco-Roman world. The Christians merely scheduled their celebrations of Jesus' birth on the same day as these pagan festivals to somehow make it easier for pagans or early converts to convert or start to celebrate Christmas.
When you go back home tonight, when you drive up to your house and see it all lit up and that fake manger got down there, hey, tell me, who's that little dirty, ugly baby you got on your lawn? Who's that dirty, ugly plastic baby
That's right.
you got on your lawn
Amen.
and on your church grounds?
Amen.
Now, you may be ignorant, but do you know when you got a baby and you claim it's Jesus?
Apart from the fact that I wouldn't even have that big of an issue with this concept if it was true, when you really dig into the sources on what these festivals were when they happened, the argument starts to fall apart. The leading contender for this argument is the Roman festival of Sol Invictus, the festival of the unconquered sun. It's not until the middle of the 4th century that anyone makes the connection of Sol Invictus to December 25th, and earlier inscriptions are inconsistent, placing Sol Invictus throughout August, October, and early December. Christians, on the other hand, had already pinpointed December 25th as the date they thought Jesus was born, decades before any of this. I'll go into more detail in a little bit as to the reasons behind all of that, but Sextus Julius Africanus in the late 2nd and early 3rd century had already made that conclusion, and we have some early evidence that Christians were acknowledging it as such. In reality, Roman temple worship was on the decline by the 4th century, and it is just as possible and even more probable that the pagans moved their celebrations to December 25th to compete with the Christians.
Because Jesus Christ is God, and God said, make no image of me. Who told you? See, that's blasphemy. Why is it, Pastor Jennings? God ain't no baby.
That's right.
When Jesus walked this earth, he ain't still no baby.
No.
Who told you he had blonde hair, blue eyes, and white skin?
Were a growing religious majority at the time. In fact, Pliny the Younger in the early 2nd century had already noted, potentially a little bit hyperbolically, that the Roman temples were being forsaken due to so many Christian converts. And Emperor Julian, who was emperor for 3 years in the 4th century, grew frustrated with the lack of Roman religious devotion to idols in his time and blames the Christians specifically for this pagan crisis of faith. In his work, The Origins of the Liturgical Year, historian Thomas Taylor says this exact thing when he states that it is more likely the Roman Emperor Aurelian placed Sol Invictus on December 25th to compete with the growing rate of Christianity.
Who told you he was light-skinned or brown-skinned with dreadlocks? You ain't never met him.
That's right.
He ain't walking the streets of Delaware. Who told you he had curly locks?
That's right.
Who told you he had little pudgy toes?
Amen.
Who told you that he had little old fat knees?
Yeah.
Others have tried to accuse December 25th of being the date of the Feast of Saturnalia, the Roman pagan festival honoring the agricultural god Saturn. However, much like Sol Invictus, our earliest sources for Saturnalia come late. Macrobius in the 5th century says that Saturnalia was celebrated 14 days before January, and keep in mind that the ancient Roman calendar at this time had 2 more days in their month of December than ours does today.
Who told you he had plaits in his hair? You bunch of heathens.
Hear ye the word.
Bunch of Dover, Delaware heathens.
That's right.
And when you go back home, you take that manger and collect it and put it in a plastic bag and set it out on trash day.
Amen.
This only comes out then to December 17th. Vermalia, although a multi-day festival in ancient Rome devoted to Saturn and Kronos, comes in as a potential candidate. But Vermalia starts in late November and ends on December 17th, right in time to celebrate the day of Saturnalia.
Well, Pastor Jennings, that's the Christian thing. That's paganism.
Amen.
That's idolatry.
Yeah.
Who told you Mary looked like that? Who told you Joseph looked like that?
That's right.
I want you to get the old troublemaker. I want to bring you back the Bible and get you away from these foolish church traditions.
That's right.
In fact, there is no evidence that December 25th was selected to replace a pagan holiday. And other sources of deities like Tammuz, Horus, Ahura Mazda, Mithra, Attis, or Dionysus being born on or around the winter solstice, those dates come well after the 4th century, and therefore long after we know Christians had already identified Jesus' birth on December 25th and were starting to celebrate it then.
Everybody go hungry all year, then the church get a spell from hell and want to give out turkeys in December. Hungry all year long. All year long, folks is hungry. And then the church get a spell from hell. And all of a sudden want to get involved in the community, you bunch of heathens.
Amen.
In 386, John Chrysostom says that Christmas was being celebrated on December 25th and describes it as a long-time tradition. The Phalocalian calendar, produced in 354, had Christmas listed as a holiday on December 25th already. The first-hand sources suggest quite strongly that Christmas being celebrated on December 25th was at least an established tradition by the early 4th century within the Christian church. The truth of the matter is that no one really knows when the birth of Jesus was. Some in the early church believed it had to have been in the spring due to the shepherds' presence in the fields. Shepherds were in the fields from March to November, and during the winter rain months, it's unlikely, although not impossible, that they would have been out grazing with their sheep. So where did the date of December 25th come from then? Well, there was an idea within early Christianity that if you were really holy, you would die on the day you were conceived.
Judge yourself now.
Amen.
Judge yourself.
Yeah.
All of you that say Jesus was born December 25th, you lied on the Son of Man.
That's right.
You lied on the Messiah.
Right.
You lied on Christ.
Yeah.
When you go to a church and your preacher got to preach a sermon, you got a heathen for a pastor.
Yeah.
This was calculated mainly because the Old Testament would record the life of individuals like Moses and present round numbers without adding months or days for how long they lived. For example, in Deuteronomy 3:7, it says that Moses was 120 years old when he died. Well, the most holiest man who ever lived was Jesus. Therefore, the early church thought he must have died on the day he was conceived. Going off of the evidence in the Gospels as to when the crucifixion was, which they believed counted out to March, and then they counted ahead 9 months, they got December 25th. Is this something we today should hang our hat on? Well, the jury is out on that one.
Customs of the people are vain.
Anything that's vain is no good.
No good.
What do they do, son?
For one cutteth a tree out of the forest.
Oh, cut it. You ain't got to cut it now. They cut it for you and sell it to you.
That's right.
They cut the tree down at the forest. What they do, son?
The work of the hands of the workman with the axe.
What they do?
They deck it.
With what?
With silver and with gold. Deck it. Deck it.
And what did God call them that do this?
Learn not the way of the heathen.
And what do the heathen do to the tree?
They deck it with silver and with gold. It's right there.
I mean, what about Christmas trees? After all, don't I bring sacrifices to it while holding hands with my loved ones to sing songs before bowing down to retrieve my presents in pagan worship? Once again, the sources we do have for the origins of the Christmas tree aren't even remotely pagan. One potential comes from the story of St. Boniface from the 8th century, when he's said to have cut down the sacred oak tree that the locals had dedicated to Thor. When he wasn't killed by lightning, he's said to have pointed to the fir tree and dedicated it to Christ. Some scholars have hypothesized that the tradition arose from the paradise trees in the 1500s. A paradise tree was an evergreen tree decorated with fruit to represent the tree of life in the Garden of Eden, and a play telling the Genesis story would be done around the paradise tree. The plays were typically held on December 24th, and then, as the fruit was taken off the tree remained, and it was then decorated for the next day in celebration for Christmas. These trees set up in people's houses would remind them of the Garden of Eden on Christmas Eve, and the restoration of Christ coming into the world of the garden to come in the new heaven and the new earth.
The best way to honor Jesus is to read the Bible and follow his teachings. I really admire Wes Huff for how he explains things clearly, with a lot of knowledge, and without being judgmental. Even though I celebrate Christmas, I do think the holiday has become too much about shopping and making everything perfect. Most of the time, Christmas isn't even about Jesus anymore. People might read the nativity story for a few minutes, but then it's back to focusing on gifts and stuff. I don't judge anyone who celebrates it differently. I've never done that. I don't think it's a salvation issue, but I feel strongly that we shouldn't let materialism take over. Like Pastor Gino Jennings says, we should care for the hungry and needy all year, not just during the holidays. I'm grateful for people like Wes Huff, who work hard to explain important topics, and for Pastor Gino Jennings, who isn't afraid to challenge traditions. They both remind us to focus on what truly matters, living like Jesus every day.